Welcome to Work It Out, Sweat Therapy with Emily, yours truly. And today we are doing a stretch flow while we talk about letting that shit go. So all you need is yourself and a mat today. What does letting go actually mean? I feel like so many times, whether I was in therapy or in discussions with friends, I've had someone say to me, you just gotta let it go. It really takes understanding what that means. The word letting it go and the application of it really requires you understanding what letting go means and what it means for you. I'm gonna just share what I've been in a process of learning and applying, because application is everything. You can read all the self-help books in the world, and until you actually start executing and applying to your own life, it's probably not going to help you, right? So as we do this flow, this is something I call my intuitive flows, where I stretch according to what my body's telling me and what's tight. So follow along with me, but if there's anything in the stretching that you feel like you need to either hold longer, maybe not go as far, then definitely make it according to what your body needs. Remember, stretching, it should never have pain. When you're stretching, you should feel lengthening, but not pain. So please listen to what your body's telling you as we talk about letting go. So to me, and what I figured out, is that letting go really involves letting go of both the past and the future, because it's the attachment to those two things that really can cause some angst. That's where the problems can start for someone, right? So there's many reasons, and we've all been there, done it, and do it, where we hold on to something from the past that maybe is no longer serving us. So I'm not talking about good memories, right? We love holding on to that stuff. That's like having a photograph and putting it in an album to hold on to it, right? It gives you pleasant feelings and good memories. But then there's stuff that we hold on to that doesn't serve us, and that's holding on to the past. Then we can have an attachment to the future. And what that means is almost putting an attachment to an outcome. So you want things to go a certain way. And that also is not letting things go. But why we do both of these things of holding on to the past and putting expectation on the future is actually a protective mechanism. So it's a survival response. It's a fight or flight mode response, if you will. And although it's an innate response that can happen subconsciously, it's not a great one, because it keeps us in a loop of anxiety or not being present, to be honest, about not being present. So to speak from my lens of my journey learning this, and again, therapy has taught me a lot, books have taught me a lot, really journaling and looking at myself and introspective work has taught me a lot. But I knew for myself, the protective mechanism, I was stuck almost in that fight or flight mode, or stuck in the survival response. And so for me, really attaching myself to a future outcome meant I was operating out of fear, right? So if I could control what was going to happen in the future, I thought in my brain, I was eliminating the possible scenarios of what could go wrong. When in actual fact, my attachment to that future outcome was so rigid, and I was so stubborn with it, or so tunnel vision with it, it was actually causing me more harm than it was good, because that's where that anxiety loop starts, right? So when things veer and don't happen the way that we are attached to the outcome of them happening, that's when all of a sudden it becomes scary and unfamiliar, and wait, it's not going according to plan, and I'm not getting this result that I'm attached to. So then what happens? This anxiety loop. And then you just keep repeating it and really doing it to yourself. That's all a survival response. And I think what can happen too, and what's so interesting about attachment, is we can attach to things that feel comfortable, right? So even if they don't serve us. So let's say something that happened in the past, even though it's not a good thing, right? So it's not a pleasant scenario or environment. Sometimes we recreate it because it's comfortable. So we're attached to a very thing that's hurting us. But because it's familiar, we're like, okay, I can stay right here, it's safe. When in reality, it's actually causing more harm. So an analogy that I really love in regards to that is picturing a rope, right? So picture that you're holding onto a rope really tightly. That is that attachment. You're attached to that rope. And then all of a sudden, so that, again, that could be past attachment or future, right? You're holding onto that rope really tight, and then all of a sudden, someone starts pulling the rope the other way. And so you're like, whoa, hold on, I gotta hold even tighter. And the friction that creates from it going that other direction and you resisting and being like, no, I'm attached to this right here, is going to hurt your hands. It's gonna cause them to be raw. We have all experienced that. If you played tug of war as a kid, that hurts, right? So all of a sudden you're being hurt the tighter you hold on to that very thing. And I think when I have visualizations like, or analogies that help me see things like that, I'm like, why am I attached to this thing when I could just let it go? And yeah, it could be scary in a moment of letting go. You might lose your footing, you might fall back a little, but by letting go, you're opening yourself up to what is, number one, supposed to be, right? Because we can't control all the outcomes. We're not supposed to control the outcomes in life, right? There's certain scenarios like your business goals, your this goals, there's small control that pays off, right? Like goals pay off. But in the grand scheme of things, you gotta let go in order to actually get where you need to be, right? So I really like try to hold on to visualizing that rope, and it in scenarios where I'm like, girl, you're attached again, I picture my hands hurting, and it really helps me detach from that moment of holding on. Also in understanding personally how I needed to let go and where I needed to let go, because I think that's very important too, is identifying the root, right? The root of things, where things come from, so you can understand how to heal them. I love the saying, like, what triggers you is what is left to heal. So I think that's very true in an aspect of learning how or what to let go. So I read about the 4 attachment styles because I didn't understand them, and definitely suggest, we'll put in the bio of the book. The 4 attachment styles are secure, avoidant, anxious, and fearful avoidant. And I'm sure there's many other remixes or variations if you go to Google of that. But I realized, and maybe you're like this too, I'm kind of a mix of several of the attachment styles depending on the situation or the person. So if it is a situation like getting attached to maybe a certain work outcome, I'm definitely more of an anxious attachment style. So because I'm healing from catastrophizing. That's another topic at another time. But instead of putting trust into what I'm doing, I used to really think about what could go wrong. So I had anxious attachment to the outcome, right? And then in dating situations, I really noticed that when it always depended on the person, not to blame the person because it's 100% our shit, right? But depending on how let's word it that way, how I let a person make me feel, it was either secure. We love that. We love that. And I definitely think learning from the secure moments is really helpful also in learning how to let go of the other moments that don't serve, right? Which is the anxious attachment. And I think certain times in which that triggered in me, again, triggers showed us what we have to heal, is it would be maybe from a lack of communication. Let's say that, right? So the person wasn't communicating. Maybe I didn't know them too well yet to know that's the way they are, or their personality, or their style of communication. And all of a sudden my brain would go crazy in anxious attachment, being like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? Maybe they don't like me as much. And then just take it and run, right? So I think the greatest lesson of letting go is to really identify those moments, right? So I would really catch myself in a moment of like, why do I feel this anxiety, right? So finding the root of it, identifying the feeling, finding the root of it, and then being like, I've attached myself to this very specific outcome. So again, going to that dating scenario of I've attached myself to only feeling secure or calm or good when they communicate with this frequency, which I created, right? So I created that loop based off attachment. So it was, that was probably where it was like most apparent and most helpful, because number one, we cannot control another human being. We should not want to. Just as we cannot control the future, right? Going back to that whole what letting go means, past and future. This whole series is about taking the time to learn yourself, but I just highly suggest you taking the time to learn about attachment style so that you can really identify it. I think a lot of peace and ease will enter your life when you address that and when you identify it. I cannot stand when someone says like, yeah, this is the way I am, and just choose to sit in the shit, right? For lack of a better term, or the title of this video, let that shit go, is you don't have to just sit with feelings that don't serve you or behaviors or thoughts that don't serve you. You can identify it, address it, and let that shit go and be better off. Like, peace is waiting for you if you choose to want it and to see it. So I think that's honestly what's so important about, again, identifying the attachment styles and really learning where are you attached in an unhealthy way. Picture that rope. Like, where are you holding on tight where it's hurting you? And the other part of that, or the other way to think of it, is the energy you're spending holding on to something and attaching to something that isn't serving you, helping you, making you feel good, helping you grow, filling your cup back up, is doing the opposite. It's draining you, it's hurting you, it's wasting your time and energy, it's taking you further away from growth. It is going that opposite way. That rope is hurting you and pulling you into the dirt. So really just like hold on to that if you feel like you no longer want to feel anxiously attached, or anxiety about the future, or not being able to enjoy the right now. We just talked about different ways that you can learn how to detach, which has helped me a lot. But the other thing that really helped me is a journal prompt. And that is when I find myself attached to a specific outcome, and I'm a Leo and I'm stubborn, so it's tunnel vision time, right? So when I catch myself in that moment of being super attached to an outcome, I write down 5 other potential positive outcomes that aren't that one that I'm attached to. Positive, okay? We're not talking possible things that could go wrong. We don't speak that language, okay? We no hablo things that go wrong, okay? We're talking about things that could go right. 5 things that are not that outcome you're attached to. So let's use this as an example. You have a work project that you're working super hard on, right? And you're like, okay, this work project, when I ace it and I do such a good job, it's gonna lead to a raise. So the outcome that you're attached to in regards to that is the raise. So what you would do is write down 5 other positive things that could happen from you nailing and working hard on that project, putting your best into it. So maybe one of those things is you actually get a new position from it. So it is a promotion in a way, but you get an entire new position because they see a skill set in you from you executing that project. Or maybe you get to go be a keynote speaker at some travel related gig that's associated with the job because they were like, wow, this project, the world needs to see it. You just write down anything. And I mean, think big, think outside the box, because I think part of attachment and the need to let go is we put ourselves in that box, and we're not thinking bigger, we're not thinking outside of what we're, again, comfortable with. And I promise you, if you make that a habit, like constantly writing 5 other positive outcomes, things start happening, positive things start happening that you could not imagine. So it's almost like attracting that, or it's letting your brain get out of the loop of holding on tight and letting things come in. Because when you let go, it lets things come back in. And the last thing that helps me is just honestly, consistently and constantly remembering how to be present. So catching myself, gratitude is a great way to do that. Stopping and smelling the roses is literally the best way to stay present. So catching myself and then continuing to do things that trigger being present. Because remember, as long as you are present, you cannot be worrying about the past or the future. You cannot be attached to something that has happened or something you want to happen. And it makes you be here right now, which is the only place you should be. And the only place you should be focusing on. And I hope with this video, it is the only place that you are focusing on improving, being introspective, looking inward, and honestly finding these things and healing these things so that you can get the most out of right now. Let me know if this helps you. It is time to let that shit go, okay? That is the theme. Let it all go. Do not attach yourself to things that do not serve you. Let go. Also do your stretches. I'm not gonna let go of this stretch because I'm a little tight, so I'm just gonna stay right here. I need to hold this. Yeah, okay. Be right here. Woo, these hip flexors are tight. God, I need to let go of this tightness. Am I dehydrated? I think I might